You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
Hey everybody, this is Dan Barrett from AdWordsNerds.com. How are you, my wonderful friends? I hope you are having an awesome week. And this week, I have a really cool interview for you. I interview an investor down in the Raleigh area. He's investing down in Wake County there. His name's Uriah Dortch. Now, you may not know Uriah. Is not someone that goes around and is on a lot of podcasts or whatever, but what Uriah brings to the table is really fascinating. He is bringing a really new angle to the way that he gets motivated sellers. And this is everything from the brand that he's built with his wife, which is really high quality and really cool, to the way that he customizes his website, to the way that he does video and Instagram. He's really, really leveraging the online space in a very smart way. Super smart dude. And I can't wait for you to get to know him a little bit more. So without any further introduction, let's get into my interview with Uriah Dortch. All right, I am here with Uriah Dortch from inspiringinvestmentraleigh.com. Uriah, how are you, man? What's going on?
I'm doing great, man. Just out here in Raleigh, buying houses.
Okay. Well, I know you're on your phone on this call right now. Are you actually out and about, looking at properties, or what are you actually doing in the moment?
Yes, I have been today. Had a couple scheduled appointments, so just want to make sure we were able to get this done, but didn't want to miss it.
Is it super hot down there? Because we just had a wild heat wave up here, and I know it was kind of a nationwide thing. Did you get real melted?
Yeah, it got up to 97, with 110 heat index for a couple days there, and then today it's 83, and it feels amazing. And it rained for hours yesterday, and then brought in the cool weather with it. So
yeah, people are walking around with hoodies on in 84-degree weather because it's just comparatively much cooler.
Yes, people wore jackets today, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Well, all right, so let's get into this. So I mentioned this before. Your website is inspiringinvestmentraleigh.com, and you are investing in Wake County, which is, people aren't familiar with Wake County, which I wasn't really. It's just kind of like Raleigh and the surrounding areas, which is pretty awesome area to be investing in and living in. Let's kind of start at the beginning. How did you get involved with real estate investing? I like this question because real estate investing is kind of a weird world. And I feel like everybody has a different sort of way into this industry. So what got you started doing what you're doing?
Yeah, there was kind of two parts. The first was in bottom of the recession, 2009. I was scouring Craigslist for a year looking for our first home to buy for us as a personal resident. And we find this little ranch out in Holly Springs that was, you just kind of know your numbers. After looking for that long, even with no experience, you kind of know when there's a good deal. And it was $99,000. And I said, I told my wife, I was like, babe, we've got to go look at this house. And it was a wholesaler. So I bought my first house from a wholesaler on Craigslist in the bottom of the recession. Then we worked on that for 4 years. So that's kind of got us into the whole idea of buying distressed properties and renovating them. And then in 2013, I actually got to take on a job with American Homes for Rent. They were buying a rental property across the U.S. So I helped them buy about 2,800 houses here in the Raleigh metro. And that really launched me into understanding the scale, working in systems and just the process of buying houses. And we were renovating them. So I was getting the construction side as well. So you kind of get an idea real quick, this is what it takes, and it wasn't an issue anymore. The thought process I wasn't scared to buy a house or what's going to happen or what could be wrong or, it just becomes a second nature thing. So that kind of really launched me. And then at some point that job kind of dried up. They said, hey, we're not buying anymore. And then, second phase of life, I just said, babe, here we go. I can either go get a regular job. We've been flipping some houses on the side for the last couple of years, or we can really just take this full time and let's see what happens, which we did. And then within 3 months, we had 6 houses under construction. And I said, I think we're good, and we just kept going.
That's awesome. I mean, so there's a couple of things I wanted to ask about. Like, I definitely want to come back to the systems thing because I know you mentioned that. What do you think do you think that kind of like mindset switch for you was that like a big element in you being able to jump to full time? Because I think a lot of investors, they kind of have to make the decision before they get there, right? Like they're in a lot of people's heads jumping into investing, that's a risky thing. Did it feel risky to you because you'd had that experience already?
No, it felt less risky. I had other jobs, and every one of them at some point or other, like, the work kind of dried up, or in the middle of the recession, you get laid off, or, a number of other reasons. And that to me seemed risky, not knowing when you're going to have a job next week. So to me, having our own business that I can control, and I know when the properties are coming in, I know, I can put food on the table for my family. It was not risky at all. It seemed like the logical step. Like I said, and then just being around it so much previously, it just, like I said, the idea of doing, buying rental properties and flipping homes was second nature. So,
yeah, I think it's like a lot of people misread that, right? They think about being entrepreneurial or something like investing or whatever it is. It's like, that's the risky option. But like you still have risk if you're working for someone else. You just have way less of an idea of what's going on. Like at least
that's what I feel like.
At least in your business, you're like, I'm going out of business next month. Like,
I mean, yeah, if you don't have anything coming in, you're going, okay, we don't have any projects, no houses. I don't have anything under contract. I know, hey, when I sell these last few houses that we have in stock, if I don't need to replace them, then, what's coming down the pipeline. But yeah, if you work for somebody else, you might kind of notice, but you might not, and it might be over before you even realize it. So that to me is a lot more risky than working for somebody else.
Yeah. I'll never forget, like when I was out of college and I was working as like an SAT tutor, like for Kaplan. Like I would go to people's houses, do that. And I got a job at this, like, it was like a tutoring, like a Kumon or whatever it was, but it was local, right? So it was like a place kids would go, and I would go and I would tutor them. And like, relatively new business, but he's doing pretty brisk business in like a pretty nice little suburb. And I was like, cool, this is like my steady gig, because tutoring was kind of up and down. And I just remember I went into work one day and the boss guy never showed up. And then he didn't show up the next day. And the girl that was kind of like the manager, I was like, hey, what's going on with this dude? And she's like, I really don't know. Like, he's supposed to be in. And then the third day I went in, she was like, oh, I found out that like he took all the money and fled the country. Like he just went to Mexico or something. And like,
oh my gosh.
And didn't tell anyone, didn't tell any of the parents, like didn't tell anyone that worked there. Like he just bounced, right? And like, I didn't get paid for that week or whatever it was. And I just remember that as being like, oh yeah, like it seems like way more stable than it is. There's a lot of, it's
a perception that I think, people want to have, that it's just safer, but I could, as you just said, it's easily debatable that it's not at all safer.
Yeah. Well, you also said earlier, one of my favorite words, which is systems, right? So like, tell me a little bit about that. Like, it sounds like would you say, are you like a systems oriented person in terms of how you run your business?
I am on the acquisition side. My wife handles a lot of the systems as far as renovation, selections, ordering. I work well with systems. I don't do well to create them. So I had been like I said, in previous jobs, we had a lot of systems and rehab. I knew, we had so much data on exactly, not exactly, the averages of the rehab budgets for a house of what particular square footage and what year it was built. So, that was a drastic help for us to get going, because we can kind of look at that and go, okay, on average, and I'm looking at a house or an auction house, I can underwrite this really quickly and say, hey, here's the average. If we're in a range where I can make it work, it's one that we're going to go after. And we were doing a lot of auctions at the very beginning as well, because I knew that we had bought hundreds of houses at auction prior to us starting our own company. And so I knew that process really well. And then, like I said, then we fed in the off-market deals directly to sellers and just kept moving forward with that. But the systems were I work really well with them, and it really helps our business. I would be honest and say my wife's a lot better at creating them, and I'm a lot better at following them.
That's funny. I mean, obviously you need both, and it sounds like you and your wife kind of split the skill sets a little bit, which is pretty great. Can you talk a little bit about like what's working with her? Like, did you guys work together at all? I guess you said you were flipping on the side, right? So you were doing that together before?
Yeah, we were. I mean, she was an ICU nurse for a long time, and so she was doing that, and that helped her system side. They had a lot of those at the hospital, but we were working together. Like I said, ordering. She was doing selections, and I was making things happen on the job site. And then, we kind of know our roles. And if I step over into her lane, she usually says, "Hey, get out of my lane. That's not your decision to make." And that helps out our business a lot better, which I would say anybody in any type of partnership, whether it's your husband and wife or a business partner in this, venture, know your lanes, know where you need to be working, and don't, stay out of the other person's way. Because if you cross in, they usually take it personally. "Hey, like, we've discussed this. This is not your job. You shouldn't be giving me, or giving me your thoughts about what we need to do with acquisitions or rehabs or whatever their job is."
Yeah. I mean, that strikes me as like such a valuable skill to have, like, in and out of the business. It's like my wife and I, we don't work together at all. My wife's a stay-at-home mom, but like recently I fired like a personal assistant. And I went to her and I was like, "Hey, like, I know you kind of been wanting to do something like not involving picking up food and like, putting a screaming child to bed or whatever." So I was like, "Dude, you interested in this?" And she's like, "Sure, let's try it." And it's shocking to me. Like, I'll give her something. She's great. Like, she's super logistically minded. I think when the kids get older, she'll go work for someone and she'll absolutely crush whatever she does. But it's like the amount of times I've needed to bite my tongue over something, like I'm like, there's no reason for me to chime in here, and I just want to, like, super bad because I'm used to it. You know what I mean? I'm just used to being the guy, and I'm like, oh, this is probably good for my marriage to just like train me to like shut my mouth every now and then. Not every my opinion, so it's good. It's good boss training.
It is. Sometimes it's like, "Hey, they're doing their best here. Like, let them roll with it. Maybe you can give them some critiques later in the day." But
or it's like, or I could just look at it and be like, I know for an actual fact that when I've done this in the past, I've done it way worse than this. So like, maybe just don't say anything. That's been good. So like, tell me a little bit about Raleigh. I've been to Raleigh a couple times. It's an awesome place to be, but I don't know much about it as a housing market. So like, actually, let's do this. Explain to sort of folks like what your model is, whether you're like wholesaling or flipping or lease options or buy and hold or whatever, like whatever your mix is. And then tell us a little bit about like what Raleigh as a market looks like in terms of your competition and like what the properties are like and all that kind of stuff. Give us that kind of context for your business.
Yeah. As far as our business model, we mainly flip. We do hold some rentals, but they're all houses that have come out of our flip funnel. So they're all houses that we have renovated. Almost all of them have been extensive renovations. So I know they're all new electric, new plumbing, new roofs, windows, like siding, it's almost like a new house. And I keep those because I know, they're going to be solid and low maintenance for the next, foreseeable future. And they're all in great locations. There's a little town called Cary. I have a couple there. I have a couple rentals in Raleigh near the downtown area. So they're all in high appreciating areas. We, the money we have in those is all a lot lower than surrounding areas or surrounding houses because we were planning on flipping it, so we have a good equity position. So as far as the market here, it's incredibly difficult for people to come in and flip homes, from not having any previous experience. I get calls almost weekly from guys like, "Hey, will you teach me how you do and all your secrets?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah, you go like, "Hey, let me take you out to lunch," and it's like, "Bro, I can buy my own lunch. Like, lunch costs $10."
Yeah. But it's difficult, definitely, to make it on your first one here. You're not going to find anything on MLS that's worthwhile. Typically, I'm sure people do, onesie twosies, but you're not going to find any type of flow. I wouldn't put it up there with necessarily like a tier 1 city, but we're definitely a solid, I call it tier 2. You're under Atlanta, Houston, New York. Like, we're not that competitive, but there's definitely some big players here. But you like they usually say, you need to find your niche. You need to find what you're good at, as that you can make work. I don't need hundreds of houses to make our business run well. So we need 20 to 30 a year, and we're good. So I can easily make that happen.
So would you say it's like, it sounds like what you're saying is like maybe the total number of investors doing deals is maybe like lower than average, but the sort of savviness and sort of quality of the competition is higher?
I would say there's a bunch of small guys that are doing a handful of deals every year, which is probably pretty common. There's probably a handful of guys doing any type of decent volume, meaning like 20 plus a year in the area. And, we particularly have a high quality in our flips. Like, we don't do a lot of, lipstick stuff. We want to make sure that people that get our houses are getting a good product. So, we regularly get agents that come back to buy our, they see our listings come up and they're like, hey, when's your next listing coming up? I have clients that want a house like y'all's, because they know what we put out is fine. I would argue that it's probably one of the better houses that you're ever going to find in a neighborhood. Up against any other flipper, I would say the quality is, far superior. But, that means sometimes we get higher prices than they would, but we probably spend more than they do. I don't know if their profits are better, but we don't want to put out a bad product and just for the sake of making a little extra money. Yeah,
like you're building a reputation based on the quality of the properties that you're selling. Yeah, so it's
exactly. I know very few companies in the area that actually have a brand. Like, hey, this is our brand. We're the Inspiring Investment. We here's what we do, and we want to make sure that we treat everyone well, and that they in 5 years when they go to sell their house, that their house is still a great house, and it's not I get calls from people like, oh, I bought a flip, and then we found out that the guy covered up all these foundation problems, and then I literally went out with an attorney to a house that had been flipped 3 weeks ago, and as a consultant, because he was like, hey, should he have known this? And I was like, yeah, he should have known that, or he was just really bad and had no idea what he was doing. Either way, it was not, it was not a good thing. So.
Are you an investor who wants to dominate your local market? Do you want more leads and deals online? Then download your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint, absolutely free, at www.adwordsnerds.com/gift. What are you waiting for? Go to www.adwordsnerds.com/gift right now to get your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint.
It's interesting to me because I think, I've talked about branding for investors before on this podcast, and I've talked about it online and in various places or whatever. But I think it's, for a lot of investors, brand is a very kind of nebulous term, right? And like, I think for me too, like coming from an online marketing background, it's very direct response oriented, right? Like, I want to show someone an ad, I want to get that lead in, I want to close that deal, right? I'm very much about like that immediate transaction. But branding is this kind of like really powerful long-term strategy, because it's like you said, like people start to know your name, they start to associate your name with the quality of work, and they start to come to you of their own accord because they're like, hey, we know you produce a certain amount of quality. And I think for a lot of investors, that's, for one, it's kind of hard to quantify the ROI on that. And like for two, it's very hard to do, right? Because you got to do it over time. It's all about consistency. But I think it's a huge differentiator. We're entering into this really competitive, I'm not entering in, we are in this really competitive market for investors. And I just think that like branding, like the way that you're doing it, is this huge invisible asset that's very hard to reproduce, right? Because you have to put in the time. There's no shortcut to it. So, was that like a conscious strategy on your part where you're like, we're really going to set ourselves apart based on, these qualities? Or did it just kind of come from, hey, we want to do a certain kind of work and people are starting to notice it?
Yeah, we just felt like it was the right thing to do, to do really high quality work, and then people noticed it. We did want we actively thought we want to create a brand. We want to have a name that is something people can, grab a hold of and say, okay, yeah, like these guys are great. I have my license as a realtor as well. So there's that high level of ethics that we work in. We don't like shady business at all. It frustrates me to no end. And, some wholesalers are pretty honest with their people. Like, hey, we're going to wholesale this. We're going to find other investors to buy this house. But usually when I talk to people, they've already gone through one wholesaler or two, and they're like, hey, they strung me out for a long time, and they were asking for price reductions, and I don't know if I can trust this guy anymore, and they just said, we just need somebody that's actually going to buy the house. And I'm like, yep, okay, then, you've actually called the right person now. And, it was definitely a conscious decision. My wife has built a pretty good brand site, which is it's theinspiringinvestment.com, which is mainly just like a blog format of like tips and decorating ideas and things like that. And that's helped us out a lot too, stand apart, because it's more important we do a lot more, trying to get into education, teaching other people about how to flip a house, what that would look like, like high level stuff. But even that, I remember when we first started, I didn't even know, like, when do you sand the floors to refinish them? Is that before paint, after paint? When is that, when do I do this? Like, I didn't even know these processes. So you can find out some of that stuff now, but we're trying to just put together some educational tools for other people just getting started.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely so if you're an investor, you're listening to this. I hope if you're not an investor listening to this, I don't know what you're doing, because it's for investors. So, I appreciate it, but I don't know. Maybe you just like the sound of my voice, I help you go to sleep or whatever. But assuming you're a real estate investor, I highly recommend that you go check out Uriah's site. So your investing site is inspiringinvestmentraleigh.com. It's investment is singular. So inspiringinvestmentraleigh.com. And you were just pointing out your blog, which is theinspiringinvestment.com. I think your seller site here, Inspiring Investment Raleigh, is a really good example of a good way of customizing. You're an on-Carrot customer currently, right? So you've done a really good job of like customizing Carrot to make it unique. It doesn't look like anybody else's site. It's still highly conversion oriented. You guys put like cool content on it. The pictures look good. You've got some really high quality video on there that I think you did a really good job on. So I think that's you guys, I would highly recommend you go check out Uriah's site and kind of look at kind of like inspiration for some ideas and stuff to do on your own site. What do you guys do for marketing right now? Like, what does your marketing kind of mix look like in terms of getting seller leads?
Yeah. One thing I just want to say about the Carrot websites, like they're decent, right? They're a good platform to get started on. But when you search, in your market of, the top guys, most of them do have the Carrot sites, let's be honest. But man, they all look exactly the same. And I'm looking at a house that doesn't look like anything in our market. Like, it looks like you got a house out of New Mexico sitting in here for Raleigh. Like, you didn't do any work to customize this or work on it or anything. And so we just said, man, we want to be different from the beginning stages. Like, we love our clients. Usually we get hugs. If you watch that video, people are just like, thank you so much for doing this. And it's not a bad thing that we're doing in our market. But as far as what marketing channels we use, our goal has always been every year in January that I'll do a lot of research, figure out kind of what's the next thing people are pushing into. We tend to focus heavily each year on one specific marketing channel. So like first year was auctions. Okay, we're going to, full bore. That's all we did pretty much. We had a couple off market deals from direct mail, but we weren't really doing it heavily. Second year, I said, hey, auctions were just, the consistency is there. We just keep going with that, but we kind of have it on a system and it just keeps running.
Yeah.
Then, January 1 comes up. We say, okay, this one's going to be direct mail. Let's set up a system. We figure out what works, what kind of people we're going to target. Okay, that's a system. It just keeps going and keeps chugging. every day. So you kind of add in these channels every year, and not try to take too many things on at once. I think guys, they get started like, oh, I got to do this, and I got to do this one, then I do this one. And it's all within a couple months, and then they're burned out because they're not even really learning anything. They're just trying to implement it all at once.
Right.
Then we did Facebook ads, then we did Google pay-per-click, and on and on. Then every year you just try to add another layer into what you're doing. The SEO was big this year. We just keep moving.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is such a good way to think about it, right? Because so I've talked about this a lot, but it's like, you can really tell the people who look at a marketing channel as a way of, this is going to be a quick cash grab for me. So they're just like, I'm going to get in, I'm going to do a deal right away, and then I'll roll that money into it, versus the people who are like, this is going to be a big part of my business going forward, and I'm going to invest the time into figuring it out, right? So it's like, you're really going to figure out what works, and it's like, everybody does that. Like, I have to do that in my business. I think the whole idea of like adding a channel a year is like such a good one. It's such a good idea because it gives you time to learn it and tweak it and put the systems behind it and really build on top of what you have, versus kind of like what a lot of people do, which is sort of the spray and pray model of like, well, if I spend $5,000, I should.
I'm bound to get something.
Exactly. And I'm always like, oh, over the course of a year, your ROI might be like 10 times, but it doesn't mean that this month you're going to make any money at all. Right? It's like, it could all come in month 12. You never know. And
oh yeah, for sure. And we have months even now that are, we had June, I didn't get anything under contract, and I'm sitting here scratching my head going, well, what's going on? Like, it's always a little slow, but some Junes are just bad, And then this month we have 4. Like, it just comes and goes. Like, you don't know what's coming up.
Exactly.
And that's why
like, well, what's your average? You're going to be like, well, it's 2 deals a month is my average, right? But it's like, it's kind of it's a little misleading if someone comes into that and they're thinking, cool, I'm going to get 2 deals a month, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Not day one, but it takes a while to get to that point in my head. It has been for us, at least. I'm sure some guys can do it faster, but my goal as a business owner has always been slow, methodical growth. We've hired 1 employee every year since we started, and it's just who is the best, what do we need the most in our business to help it continue to grow? And I don't want to have a skyrocketing growth where all of a sudden I'm going, I can't handle payroll. This is, growing too fast, and I can't, all these problems.
Let me hire more people to make more money to pay the people I hired that I don't have the money to pay. That's what you end up doing.
Exactly.
You end up doing.
Yeah, that's what you end up doing, because you're like, I can't do it. And so that's why, just like every year, it has been every year we've hired somebody, not intentionally, but it's just, hey, we kind of look at things and reassess things on a yearly basis. And we kind of figure out, hey, do we need to hire anybody? A, and then second is, if we do, they need to be full-time or part-time? And then C is like, what is that? What does that look like? Who's the best fit to help us?
Yeah. The other thing I would recommend, if people are listening to this, is that they check out specifically the video you have on your website. I thought you guys did such a good job with that. In general, you've got some really high quality video stuff. I think you have like a YouTube channel. It's got some videos on it. Can you talk a little bit about, is video like a big part of your strategy? It's funny because so many investors will tell me like, oh, like no one watches my videos. And I'm like, bro, there's like a whole channel of just real estate investors like flipping houses. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's people watch that stuff like 24 hours a day. So can you talk a little bit about how you view video? Is that a thing you want to do more of, or how does that fit for you?
Yeah, we're definitely ramping up our video side. We spend a lot of time on Instagram, to be honest with you, doing stories and just kind of walking people through the daily life of what we do. And I try to throw in tips every once in a while, like, hey, here's, I'm out here, we're doing some new construction right now. I'm out here, here's some things we're learning. And just tips for people if you're building your own house, or, if you are trying to build a new construction, just things like that. But as far as videos go, I actually traded. So that video you see on our website, I found a guy who does video production like full time, and that's his main job, is editing and video. And I said, hey, like, I need your services, but is there anything I can do for you that might help? And he's like, man, my wife really wants a new kitchen. I was like, okay, how about this? Like, you buy materials, I'll get all my people out there, and we'll knock out and put a new kitchen in your house. and I need you to produce some videos for me.
Wow.
And then he thought that was an amazing trade. So that's what we did, which there's no money out of pocket for either of us, but it was just a straight trade because it was his, he paid for materials, but he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know which cabinet lines, so I saved him all the money because we were buying stuff. We have accounts with some cabinet distributors here in town, so I could get him all the, great deals on everything and get our pricing. And then again, I had a great video out of the deal because it was somebody that I knew produced really high quality videos. And so that was a good way to go about it.
That is really awesome story. I absolutely love that. And it just kind of goes to show, like, you don't need to invest like $1 million to get high quality video, especially now. I feel like it's a lot easier to produce really highly polished stuff. And if you can't do it yourself, like, fine. I'm sure there's someone in your market right now that wants a new kitchen. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I want a new kitchen. I don't know anything about video, but it sounds like a good trade to me. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, as any flipper, if you can't put together a new kitchen in somebody's house in a week, then you need to get out of this business anyway. So, we were able to use our skill sets and help each other out. And
well, that's the perfect thing, because it's the perfect deal in a lot of ways, because it felt to you like a good deal for you, and it felt to him like a great deal for him, and that's perfect.
Yeah,
right. That's exactly what you want.
That
is awesome. So for people listening to this, we've thrown out a couple different things to go check out. So if you go to adwordsnerds.com/podcast, you can find this episode with Uriah Dortch, and I'm going to have links to the inspiringinvestmentraleigh.com. I'll have links to the inspiringinvestment.com. I'll link to his YouTube channel. I'll link to everything. You can go find it in the show notes for this episode. But Uriah, if people want to kind of follow up with you, is there anywhere else that they can catch you online? You mentioned Instagram.
Yeah, it's at inspiring.investment is our Instagram handle. And then email is just Uriah at theinspiringinvestment.com. So feel free to email me. And
just bother you. Just send you tons of random stuff.
All that you want, sure. And I'll respond to a few of them.
Well, I don't know. I won't put your email on my website because I don't want you to only get like, people who want, to have you hold their $5 million bond or whatever from the emails or whatever. But I will definitely link to your Instagram and everything else. And Uriah, thank you so much for being on the show, man. This was great. And I think you've really brought like a cool kind of angle to this, and you're building a really amazing investment company. So I'm super happy to have you, and super excited to watch what you do going forward.
Awesome, man. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers. That is it for this episode of the REI Marketing Nerds podcast. As always, you can see the show notes for this episode and all our past episodes at adwordsnerds.com/podcast. That's adwordsnerds.com/podcast. And please, if you're listening to this and you get some value out of the show, we are just past, I think, our 50th episode. I would love if you could leave me a comment or a subscription or review wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever it is convenient for you. It helps other people find the show. And I read every single one, and the feedback means a ton to me. So if you don't mind, wherever you download this podcast, go leave me a like or a comment or a review or a star or a cookie or whatever they got. I'd really appreciate that. And as always, I will see you next week with more online marketing tips, tricks, and strategies for real estate investors. Until then, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.